So today I want to talk about Roth conversions, and specifically the three big Roth conversion myths that I hear over and over again. So over the past several years, I've had conversations with, literally hundreds of retirees about this topic, and it's honestly amazing how widely retirees vary in terms of their knowledge in this area. So I've spoken with retirees who have their tax brackets memorized and the IRMA surcharge brackets memorized. And then the very next call that I hop on, I'm with a retiree who they're not quite sure what an RMD is. Maybe they're a little fuzzy on even what Roth versus pre-tax means. But across all of those conversations, there's one consistent pattern that emerges. Most people are falling for these same three big Roth conversion myths. And unfortunately, believing and acting on these myths cost many retirees hundreds of thousands of dollars in unnecessary taxes. So what I want to do today is address these three myths, explain why they're incorrect, and reframe them with the facts. But before we jump in, my name is Robert Wickfield. I'm a certified financial planner, and this channel is dedicated to helping you retire like a pro. So to set the stage for these three myths, let's spend a minute reviewing the fundamental concept of a Roth conversion and how it can drive value for your retirement. So at its core, a Roth conversion is moving money from a pre-tax account like an IRA or a 401k, where it grows tax deferred, into a Roth IRA where it grows tax free. So in doing this, you will owe taxes on the amount of that distribution. So why would you voluntarily pay tax sooner than you're required to? Well, to answer that question, let's take a look at a hypothetical scenario here on the screen. So in this example, we have Mark, who is single, he's retiring at the end of this year, and each of these blue bars is one calendar year. The lines going from left to right represent where tax brackets begin and end. So the height of the blue bar represents Mark's taxable ordinary income in each of those years. Now I emphasize taxable ordinary income very intentionally, as there are some types of income that don't actually affect where you end up in the ordinary brackets. There's a lot to what I just said there, so we will definitely unpack that a bit more in an upcoming video. But the most important thing to understand here is that the blue bars represent Mark's taxable ordinary income over time. So you can see this very first blue bar shows Mark's earned income this year, and then it quickly drops to zero once he retires. This is what I like to call an income trough. As you can see, Mark has almost 10 years with zero taxable ordinary income. Of course, Mark will probably have some income coming in from interest and eventually Social Security, but due to the way Social Security is taxed and his built-in standard deduction, Mark ends up owing $0 in ordinary income tax over these 9 years. Now, the problem is, if you look out at the year 2035, income begins to spike dramatically. This is primarily driven by Mark reaching the age of 75 and those pesky required minimum distributions that begin to kick in. Many retirees think that once they retire, their income will drop to a level much lower than when they were working. But actually, it's quite common for someone's highest income years of their life to be when their RMDs begin. So these RMDs also affect other areas for Mark. Now 85% of his Social Security is taxable, and his capital gains likely went from being untaxed to taxed. And he's probably experiencing higher Medicare premiums as a result of this dynamic. But what if there was a way to take advantage of these lower tax bracket years here in the middle? Now, that statement exactly is the thesis of a Roth conversion. Conversions can allow us to pull forward future income into the present and allow that income to be taxed at a much more favorable rate. Here you can see there are 9 years of extremely low brackets that we are essentially wasting. And as a result, you can see that Mark is ending up in the 32% bracket at the tail end of his life. Now here's an example of what this same graph looks like, but with Mark performing conversions through the 22% bracket during his lifetime. This is what I call an optimized conversion profile. So now that we've established the basics of a conversion, let's jump back into the most common myths surrounding the strategy. So myth number 1 is the break-even point. Lots of retirees think of a conversion almost as if it was a normal investment with an upfront cost. In this case, that upfront cost would be the taxes paid on the conversion. The natural reaction is to begin calculating how many years it will take to catch up back to your original pre-conversion balance. The idea that your Roth needs to grow back to its original pre-conversion balance is a fundamental misunderstanding. The reality is any pre-tax account, like a 401k or IRA, has an embedded tax liability. Ignoring this reality is no different than someone claiming they are a millionaire because they just purchased $1 million home, conveniently leaving out the fact that they have a $700,000 mortgage. Only a portion of your IRA is actually yours, and unless you intend to donate it all to charity, you or your heirs will pay taxes on that balance at some point. So rather than trying to figure out how long it will take to get back to your pre-conversion balance, you should focus more on optimizing the overall rate of tax that you will pay on that balance. Okay, myth number 2. Early conversions are more powerful. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this when speaking to retirees about their conversion strategy. So this line is usually used by retirees to justify extremely large conversions in the early years. And they say, well, Robert, I get what you're saying, and yes, I know I'm paying tax at a much higher bracket than I normally would have to, but now all this future growth is going to be tax-free. Now, many of us have heard of the concept of time value of money. This is the idea that a dollar today is worth more than a dollar in the future. However, it's extremely important to know that the time value of money does not apply to the timing of your Roth conversion. I'll say it again. The time value of money does not apply to your Roth conversion. Let's walk through an example to demonstrate this point. So here on the screen, in scenario 1, we have a $100,000 pre-tax IRA. In this example, we pay the 22% tax up front, leaving you with a $78,000 Roth IRA. After 10 years, the account doubles and is now worth $156,000, with no tax liability attached. Now in scenario 2, we're keeping everything the exact same. It's just we're performing the conversion at the end of the 10 years rather than at the beginning. So we start with that same $100,000 IRA, it doubles over 10 years, and it's now worth $200,000. Over a period of time, you also convert that $200,000 at a rate of 22%. You're now left with $156,000 in a Roth IRA, the same exact amount as scenario 1. Now in reality, there's so many complicating factors such as IRMA, RMDs, Social Security, and so on. But the point is, if you isolate all these variables and you only manipulate the timing of the conversion, it makes zero difference whatsoever. And finally, myth number 3. The goal is to minimize taxes. I will say, this myth sounds really intuitive. Who wouldn't want to minimize their taxes? But what if I told you sometimes paying more taxes results in significantly more wealth? And if you don't believe me, let's consider a few silly examples. Would you forgo your Social Security benefit just for the sake of saving on taxes? Would you decline your pension just because it would cause your taxes to go up? Of course not. So how does this apply to Roth conversions? Well, again, your goal should not be to minimize lifetime taxes, but in reality, the goal should be to maximize after-tax net worth. Let's review 2 different conversion strategies, an optimizing conversion strategy and a rushed conversion strategy. So in scenario 1, we're doing a rushed conversion, meaning we're converting the entire balance of Mark's IRA in a single year. You can see in this example that Mark ends up with a lifetime tax bill of right around $652,000, which leaves roughly $8.5 million after tax to his heirs. In scenario 2, we're looking at an optimized conversion timeline. So here Mark is evenly performing conversions through the 22% bracket. And in this example, Mark's lifetime tax bill is way higher. It's nearly $900,000. But his heirs are left with nearly $10.3 million. If you notice, the rushed conversion approach results in a tax bill that is roughly $250,000 less than the optimized approach. But the total after-tax amount left to heirs is significantly less, by an order of $1.7 million. So you can see in this example just how damaging it can be to focus on minimizing your taxes rather than maximizing after-tax net worth. So there we have it, the 3 big Roth conversion myths. And just to recap, the 3 myths are focusing on the break-even point, early conversions are more powerful, and the goal is to minimize taxes. So as a retiree, if you can grasp why these 3 statements are incorrect, you're going to be in a much better position to capture the value that conversions can add to your retirement. Hey, thanks for watching. As always, if you have any questions at all, please leave those in the comments, and I will see you all in the next one.